Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into what honestly feels like a Hollywood script. I mean, think about it for a second. How does a completely ignored, heavily forested landmass transform into an absolute global titan? The rise of the United States to superpower status wasn't preordained at all. In fact, it was totally unexpected. We're going to trace that explosive history, from the massive land deals to the brutal conflicts that completely shaped the nation. So, let's dive right in.
It sounds completely crazy to us now, but early explorers totally missed the true potential of North America. The Vikings were actually the first to discover an island there, but they didn't even realize it was attached to a massive continent. And later on, Christopher Columbus was so laser-focused on finding a trade route for Asian spices and then Caribbean gold that he practically ignored the northern landmass entirely. He thought he was in India, grabbed some gold, and just rushed straight back to Spain.
Part 1. An unexpected discovery.
Just look at the sheer pacing of this early exploration. It's fascinating. In 1492, Columbus arrives in the Caribbean. By 1539, the Spanish are already pushing expeditions up into North America, though they backed out when they didn't find mountains of silver or gold. But then look at England. It takes them way longer to get a foothold. Their first attempt at Roanoke in 1585 notoriously disappeared without a single trace while England was distracted by war back home. It wasn't until 1607, more than a century after Columbus, that England's Jamestown colony finally succeeded.
So the absolutely crucial thing to understand here is how the global superpowers of the time basically divided up the map. Spain and Portugal literally drew a line down the middle of the globe. They were hyper-focused on South America, the Caribbean, and extracting immediate, hard wealth like gold and silver. On the flip side, you have England and France. They focused on the middle continent land of North America. They set up colonies driven by agricultural settlement and, for groups like the Pilgrims, strict religious freedom. And you know, this fundamental difference, it perfectly set the stage for the massive conflicts to come.
Part 2. Birth of a nation. Okay, so the tension builds incredibly fast here. It all kicks off with the French and Indian War in 1754, which was a massive conflict over who truly owned the American interior. Now, Britain actually wins this war against France, but there's a pretty big catch. The war left Britain virtually broke, so to pay off that huge debt, they started heavily taxing the American colonies. This direct taxation sparked a furious rebellion, leading right to the Declaration of Independence in 1776, victory in 1781, and eventually, after they realized their first attempt at a decentralized government was, well, a complete mess, the ratification of a brand new constitution in 1789, with George Washington stepping up as president.
The fundamental frustration of those early colonists basically boils down to this one very clear sentiment. What? You never help us? We're the ones who are always helping you, and how can you tax us if we don't get to vote? That right there, that sense of betrayal, is the emotional core that birthed the United States. They felt entirely used, ignored, and financially squeezed by an empire sitting a whole ocean away.
Part 3. Doubling the map.
So what was the solution for this rapidly growing new country? $15 million. That was the shocking price tag for the Louisiana Purchase. For what essentially amounts to pennies per acre, America bought an immense expanse of land from France, literally doubling the size of the nation overnight, and they desperately needed it. The American population was nearly doubling every 20 years. The average family had 7 children. All those people absolutely needed unclaimed land to live on it and farm.
But you gotta wonder, why on earth did France sell so much land for so incredibly cheap? Well, it definitely wasn't out of the goodness of their hearts. Napoleon's logic was brutally simple. He said, "I've made up my mind. We will sell it all. The money will fund our war with Britain." Napoleon was desperate. He originally had these grand plans for a North American empire, but his impending war with Britain took absolute priority. He figured, hey, if I sell this land to America, they'll be my friends forever, and I get the cold hard cash I need to crush the British right now. So, global politics inadvertently handed America its greatest real estate deal ever.
Part 4. Coast-to-Coast Expansion.
The speed of this expansion is almost unbelievable when you step back and look at it. In 1819, the U.S. simply buys Florida from Spain. Fast forward a bit to 1845, and the independent Republic of Texas, which had already broken away from Mexico, officially joins the Union. By 1846, America neatly divides the massive Oregon Territory with Britain, and then, in 1848, after a rather ugly war with Mexico, the U.S. purchases the vast northern Mexican territories, securing California right before the famous gold rush hits. In just a 50-year sprint of incredible luck and highly aggressive negotiation, America's borders explosively stretched from sea to sea.
The expansion fever got so intense during this period that it actually got a bit weird. Enter the Guano Islands Act. Yes, this is a very real U.S. law that allowed citizens to literally claim unoccupied islands covered in bird droppings, guano, which was super highly prized for fertilizer back then, as official U.S. soil. The government was so desperate to expand its reach and secure resources that claiming random bird poop-covered rocks out in the middle of the ocean became a literal act of national interest. And amazingly, this law, it's actually still on the books today.
Part 5. A Nation Divided.
But all this rapid growth couldn't mask the fact that the country was fundamentally geographically split over the institution of slavery. In the northern states, slavery was illegal and increasingly considered a great moral evil that had to be stopped entirely. However, in the southern states, slavery was deeply entrenched and formed the absolute backbone of their entire agricultural economy. This profound, irreconcilable difference had been fiercely argued about for decades. It finally came to a breaking point with the election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860. Fearing Lincoln would completely abolish slavery, the southern states separated, triggering a bloody, devastating civil war. Ultimately, the North won, the slaves were freed, and the Union was preserved.
Now, astonishingly, following the horrific bloodshed of that Civil War, and right after the tragic assassination of President Lincoln, the wheels of government expansion just kept on turning. Look at this number, $7 million. While recovering from a severe stabbing attack by an assassin himself, Secretary of State William Seward somehow managed to haggle with the Russian Empire and buy the massive, freezing territory of Alaska for just $7 million. Even in a time of profound national trauma, the American map just kept on growing.
And that really brings us to a crucial turning point for the country. Should America mind its own business, or should it mind its own interests? With the main continent conquered, American businessmen in places like the Hawaiian Islands had taken control and were actually begging for U.S. annexation. Now, some leaders argued strongly that America should remain a just nation, one that doesn't take advantage of the weak. But others feared that if America didn't step in and mind its own interests, rival powers like Germany or Japan were just going to scoop those islands up for future wars anyway.
Part 6. Onto the world's stage.
Just look at how swiftly this new global power plays out its hand in the 1898 Spanish-American War. First, an American warship mysteriously explodes and sinks in Cuba, which was already fighting a revolution against Spain. The U.S. immediately demands that Spain leave Cuba. Spain responds by declaring war. The result? The U.S. rapidly crushes the Spanish forces, capturing Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Oh, and during all that chaos, they also went ahead and formally annexed Hawaii as a strategic naval base. In one fell swoop, the United States completely dismantled the very last remnants of the Spanish Empire that Christopher Columbus had kicked off centuries earlier.
Leading this new, highly aggressive global posture was the young, incredibly energetic President Theodore Roosevelt. His entire foreign policy is perfectly, if maybe a bit comically, summarized by this interaction. Hey, Panama, welcome to the Club of Countries. We want to build a canal right here. When Colombia refused to honor a deal to build a canal through their territory, Roosevelt simply bypassed them entirely. He ruthlessly backed a revolution to create the brand new country of Panama, who, shocker, enthusiastically agreed to the canal project. It was bold, it was controversial, and it was undeniably effective.
So the climax of our journey unfolds incredibly fast from here. By 1898, the Spanish Empire is dismantled. In 1901, Roosevelt takes the presidency and completely turbocharges the American Navy into the second largest in the world. By 1914, the monumental Panama Canal finally opens, seamlessly linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, and allowing that powerful U.S. Navy to project force literally anywhere instantly. But notice what else happens in exactly 1914? World War I begins.
Which leaves us with a massive, looming question. America had officially become a global world power, but as World War I erupts, what will it actually do with this newfound might? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep wondering, keep exploring, and I'll catch you next time.